I have recently climbed a challenger mostly playing Janna, and I've been testing a lot of different runes and item setups on her. There are a lot of different builds that you can go, but I want to share with you my runes and items and how I adapt my build accordingly. Currently, Janna's best keystones are Aery and Comet. I was running Glacial in the past, but as of recently I feel like the stats you get from the sorcery tree runes make Janna's skirmishing ability too strong to give up. Depending on the draft and enemy support, I'll switch between Aery or Comet. I'll explain when I switch after I go over each page, as it will make more sense once you see the runes. Starting with the Aery page, I go Mana Flow Ban, Celerity, and Gathering Storm. I've tested Axiom Arcanist a lot, and I think it's an amazing rune on Janna, but the problem is that you are giving up Mana Flow Ban. Janna has mana issues mostly because her Q costs a lot of mana, so it's really greedy going Axiom Arcanist, as you'll be very limited in your spell usage in lane. Celerity is by far the best rune in this section of the tree, as Janna automatically uses it all game because of her passive movement speed as well as her damage scaling from her movement speed on her autos and W. As for the last section, I go Gathering Storm because the Aery build is geared for the mid and late game scaling. For the secondary runes, I go Font of Life and Revitalize. Revitalize is just the best rune for almost all enchanters, and it gives keystone level of value, so it's easily her best choice. All the other minor runes in Resolve are honestly pretty mediocre, so the best one is Font because it gives you a decent amount of sustain, and it also scales with healing and shielding power. For the shards, I like going Ability Haste, Movement Speed, and Flat Health. For this build, Adaptive Force isn't as important as Ability Haste because it's a more scaling focused build. The Movement Speed shard is best in slot because of the same reason as Celerity, and Flat Health will help you survive lane a lot more. For the ability order on this build, I go W max into E max. Most Jannas go either 3 points W into E max or E max, but I prefer W max every time. I feel a lot more impactful with this skill order and build items in a way that complements the W max, which I'll explain after I talk about the items. And for the summoner spells, I go Flash and Heal. Heal is great on Janna because the movement speed gives you more damage and the heal gets amped by your increased healing and shielding. For the Aery build, I always open with Boots and a Dark Seal. If I could only afford one, I always go Boots because movement speed is OP on Janna. After these items, I always try to rush Boots of Swiftness. This is the most commonly rushed item on Janna because it's one of her strongest and fastest power spikes in the game. To put it into perspective, when you have regular Boots and a Dark Seal at level 5, your autos do 20 extra damage from your movement speed and your W does 143 damage. When you upgrade to Boots of Swiftness, your autos get 32 damage and your W does 158 damage. If you can get a Dark Seal and Boots of Swiftness early, you will be the strongest in the lobby. I know that sounds a bit strange because you're playing an enchanter, but this is where you should be playing hyper aggressive as you win most trades and can run down everyone. Ideally, you want to buy Swifties, but it can be hard because you need 700 gold on the next back if you want to upgrade from normal boots. If I recall and don't have the gold for Swifties, I will buy Symbiotic Souls. This is the only time I will ever choose Symbiotic over Boots of Swiftness because Boots of Swiftness is by far Janna's best boot. I think Symbiotic Souls is not a bad option, and I choose it over CDR boots because the enchanter build has a lot of CDR in it already. After Dark Seal and tier 2 boots, the first item I start to build towards is Redemption. I know most Janna players will build Moonstone first, but I found that Redemption as a first item will outvalue Moonstone 9 out of 10 times. You don't even need to get a 5-man heal off of it and it will still outperform Moonstone. The healing is OP, but the thing that makes it more broken is the 5500 range. You can drop it so far from your team and the area of influence you gain that early is insane. I think Moonstone is strong on Janna only when it's complemented by another healing item, which is why I get it after Redemption. The only bad thing about rushing Redemption is that it has no AP in its components, which is why I always build Dark Seal and Boots of Swiftness. These items with W max will carry your damage and give you a smooth power curve to bridge you to the late game. Once you have Redemption and Moonstone, you can solo carry fights with your heals and shields. This item pair is hands down the strongest 2-item power combo, and the value it creates is honestly not balanced. It's really not worth going any other enchanter item combo a lot of the time because you can stat check enemies consistently so much harder on Moonstone and Redemption. This is a big reason why most high ranked Janna players don't build Helia. It may be able to outperform Redemption and Moonstone as the first item sometimes, but Helia will never provide as much value being paired with any other item compared to Moonstone Redemption. After these two items, I'll most of the time upgrade Dark Seal to Medjayas and then upgrade my boots to tier 3 if we want feats of strength. Medjayas is a great item on Janna because once you have 10 stacks, you get the 10% bonus movement speed, which gets increased by Celerity, your movement speed shard, and by doing so it amplifies your damage on your W and autos. I like playing the high risk, high reward playstyle of Medjayas, and on Janna you should be able to not die that much. As for the support item, somewhere along the way you are going to build Dreammaker for extra stat checking. I don't usually build a 4th item. I heavily prefer keeping a slot open for a control ward and to spam Elixir of Sorceries once I cap out on items. This build is relatively cheap because of Medjayas and it has a lot of potential to actually snowball. I'll sometimes flex some kills over Redemption if the enemy has big CC that I can cleanse. The thing that makes this build so strong is the overwhelming amount of stats that you can provide to your team. If we look at the numbers, you'll understand what I mean. In this 28-minute game, for my items alone, my Redemption is healing for 2.8k, My Moonstone is providing 1.3k extra healing, 730 extra shield, and my Dreammaker is blocking 1.6k damage and dealing 1.7k damage. This is just from the items alone. If you factor in Aery, Font of Life, and Revitalize, it's very hard for the enemy to have the damage to deal with all the stats. Moving on to the Comet page for the runes, I go Comet, Mana Flow Band, Celerity, Scorch, Relentless Hunter, and Deep Ward. I think there's a lot of flexibility in the domination tree based on what the enemy is playing. For example, I'll switch out Deep Ward for Grizzly Mementos if I'm playing against champions like Shaco or Tebow where I need to sweep their traps. Another example of swapping my runes is taking Taste of Blood if I know I'm going to be playing against a scrappy lane. For the shards, I go Adaptive Force, movement speed, and flat health. This is a more damage oriented build that focuses on popping off in the early and mid game, so we have no scaling runes. As for the ability order, we go W max and then Flash Ignite. For the items, I run a similar opening as the Aery build with boots and a Darksteel into Boots of Swiftness. I think this is just the best in slot for Janna regardless of build because it's that strong. The first item I build towards is going to be a Mikhail's or a Shurelya's. Shurelya's on Janna is amazing on this build because there's double AP on both components with % movement speed on Aetherwisp. Once you complete Shurelya's, the active gives you more movement speed, which gives you a lot more damage. If you thought the Darksteel Swifties opening was strong, you'll be very surprised at how much damage you do with Shurelya's. After Shurelya's, I flex upgrading my Darksteel to Medjayez, Mandate, Ardent, or Mikhail's / Shurelya's if I didn't get them early. If I have a lot of stacks on Darksteel, I go Medjayez. If the team has a lot of tanks, Mandate is great because it does % HP, and if my team has a lot of auto-based champions, Ardent is strong. Ardent not only enables them, but the on-hit and attack speed increase that you get makes you output a lot of damage because of how much your autos are already amped from your movement speed. When you combo Shurelya's with Ardent, you do tons of damage. For the support item, I like going Slay because the decaying 20% movement speed gives you a lot of damage. I think Zazax is too nerfed of an item to be good, and Bloodsong is not a bad alternative, but in some comps it can be hard to auto a lot to get the most value out of it. As for upgrading tier 3 boots, I get it at any point because there's no 2-item power spike synergy like Moonstone and Redemption, so any increase in damage or movement speed is fine. This build is all about getting ahead in the early and mid game. You have a lot more damage compared to the scaling build, so you'll be able to find a lot more winning scenarios which you'll use to snowball the game. You'll have no problem getting ahead, but if the game goes on for a long time, you are a lot weaker compared to the Enchanter build. Starting around 2.5 items, your damage starts to fall off because players start to scale and get items, so you need to be able to close out games. I choose between Aery and Comet based on the draft. Majority of the time, I will run Aery, and only under specific conditions I'll run Comet. I like running Comet against non-enchanters and when my team doesn't have good engage. You'll be able to find a lead a lot easier and not get outscaled into engage / hook champs, and Shurelya's can help make up for not having engage. I will never go Comet into another enchanter matchup because most enchanter versus enchanter matchups go even, so it's a lot better to play the scaling build. Most of the time, I prefer playing the Aery build, and I don't play too many Comet games, but in some drafts I do feel like it's necessary to switch because of team comp. That's how I switch between the two. I do think that the Comet build is a lot better to play if you're in gold or below because you'll have a lot more solo agency. It can carry the game a lot harder. Comp doesn't matter until you get to round Grandmaster because a lot of the time in solo queue, players don't come out of lane even and teamfights are not played well enough for the draft to matter. You'll find success playing either build, just try them out and pick the one you like. Thank you so much for watching. That is my season 15 guide. Good luck climbing, summoners.